9/11 found me at the South Portico bidding adieu to Mrs. Bush because she was on her way down to testify on Capitol Hill on school. And she was going up, and I think Senator Kennedy was going to receive her, and she was going to do testimony up on the Hill, discussion of No Child Left Behind, I believe. And as she was getting in the car, the Secret Service agent said to myself and to Mrs. Bush, there's been a terrible accident in New York. A plane has flown into the World Trade Center. And then he closed the door. Mrs. Bush didn't ask for any more information at that point. He said, I'll give you more information as we get it. And he turned to me as I was getting ready to go inside, and he said, you might want to go in and look at it on television. We don't know what the circumstances are. So I waited there while the motorcade moved out and around, because I've noticed that motorcade from time to time has made the circle and come right back to where I was. So I never left the South Portico until the motorcade physically left the grounds. And then I talked to one or two people, and I went back in and went to adjacent to the Secret Service room, which is on the ground floor of the residence, and started to go in the room, and there was some commotion in there, and there were a lot of people watching the television. So I figured, well, I'll go back to my office, which was just one floor above in the usher's office. And we have a television on there that we keep on frequently. And I went in there, and on the way I stopped and I think talked to the chef and to one other person. So it took me a couple of minutes to get back to the point. And as I walked into the usher's office, I looked up at the television, which is mounted high on a shelf, and I saw a plane crash into the building. And I said, my Lord, how did the press get this picture of this plane crashing into the World Trade Center? And my assistant turned to me and said, that's the second plane. And of course, at that point, it was just like somebody hit me in the stomach, and my mind started working. What people don't remember about 9/11 is that night, the president was hosting the Congress for the Congressional Picnic on the South Grounds. 12 hours later, we'd had the entire Congress, the cabinet, the president, the vice president, everybody on the South Grounds of the White House. If it had been that night instead of that morning at 9 o'clock. I immediately called the social secretary and said, obviously the picnic's off. Her response was, well, I have to get the word from the West Wing. And I said, well, I know it's off and I'm moving forward. And so we just went into a circumstance where we started putting things in place. I knew that on the South Grounds, even though the president was down in Florida, that I was going to have to get the grounds cleared because I knew the president was going to come back to the White House. So there were picnic tables and chuck wagons and tents and all kinds of things on the South Grounds that I knew had to be cleared away before the helicopter could come in. I got people through the telephone and various things talking to people, and then I went back down to the South Grounds to start to supervise that activity. And right as I walked out of the South Portico, I looked just off to the right and saw the black cloud and the flames coming from the vicinity of the Pentagon. You can't see the Pentagon from the South Portico, but it's behind the trees, and I knew what was there, and then heard the follow-up, the boom that followed onto that. And obviously, more than ever, I knew that there was an attack underway. And that even hastened. And at that point, I think everybody knew what was going on, and that's when the Secret Service started calling for everybody to evacuate. The press were requested to leave, and everybody was requested to leave. For some reason, my mind was just leaping forward, and everybody, they were evacuating to Lafayette Park. They were telling everybody in the White House to go to Lafayette Park. So I started screaming at people that were on my staff and people that I saw to don't go north, go south, because if a plane was going to come to the White House, it wasn't going to come from the north, it was going to come from the south, because the south, there's more space there, and obviously these were people who knew what they were doing, these terrorists. And so I was trying to, if there was any debris, if a plane did fly in the White House or overflew the White House, all the debris and all the mess would have been in Lafayette Park. So that was just, it just tumbles from there. But I ended up keeping 6 people with myself on the South Grounds. and we ended up moving all the picnic tables because everybody else evacuated. I was able to get the executive chef and one, the butlers, and one of my assistant ushers, and we took the food that was prepared for that night for the dinner, and we ended up serving the Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police, the West Wing people, the people from the administration who were there, the food that we were going to serve the Congress that night. But that 6 hours between the time the plane crashed into the Pentagon and the time that things pretty much got back to a more stable condition, there were no more planes in the air. The plane had crashed up in Pennsylvania. And I'm firmly convinced to this day that that plane was coming to the White House. I know a lot of people think it was going to the Capitol, but I think it's coming to the White House.